To round out the Diablo 2 game manual series for uniques, we're finishing up with one of the more important slots in the game, shields. The only way for non-assassins to fully block attacks and a key resource of multiple important character modifiers. Now in this video we will just be covering the standard shield since we already have independent videos for both the Necromancer heads and the Paladin specific shields, which you'll find linked at the end of the video. Now, even at the low end, we immediately get into why these are key tools with Pelta Lunata, a level 2 light shield with decent stat boosts and even defense for its level, but most importantly, reasonably boosted block chances and speeds for how early you get it, well, equip it at least. This is an excellent tool to pair with Rixit's Keen for early setups on characters, since you can start using it before you leave Bloodmoor and it'll last you for many more levels on at least your melee characters. And the energy and vitality boosts on the shield are actually pretty solid for anyone at this level. After that, we have the light shield Umbral Disk, which continues the trend of block chance boosts, but this time pairing it with blind target, life, and defense, and even more importantly, dexterity, which will help you translate this to higher base block into a reasonable actual block chance. This has less to offer to non-melee characters, but is still a nice shield to have early on until you can get up to the stage of using rune words and such. Stormguild again raises the bar for blocking even further, this time with a bit more of a lightning theme as well, packing a pinch of lightning damage, but more importantly lightning resist and magic damage reduction at about the level requirement you would be just entering late Act 1 and early Act 2, where you'll start seeing lightning become a threat with Tainteds and Beetles, all at a reasonable strength requirement, though that note, it is a medium shield, it does come with a bit of a sacrifice on movement speed. Steelclash, however, is a shift back to the light shields and provides a slew of bonuses that, while obviously better for a paladin, are actually solid on any character, since sure it has +1 to paladin skill levels, but also packs a significant resist all boost, some damage reduction, as well as a decent block chance and block speed boost to help you out. And since this is a light shield, which means it doesn't give you penalties to run walk, it is actually fairly solid for movement speed as well. Not to mention it makes underground or dark areas far less oppressive since it has a decent light radius boost to boot. Moving to something a bit more utility driven, we have Swordback Hold. Again, it has a boosted block chance and it is a light shield, but it packs an instance of a utility effect that's actually really useful early on, Open Wounds, which much like Umbral Disk's Blind will apply to your normal attacks. And with a 50% chance to apply it, it will be a very reliable tool against tougher bosses, as well as in preventing enemies from regenerating life. Finally, we get to a shield I don't use very often, Bverrit Keep, which isn't a bad shield by any means. It still maintains a reasonable block chance along with a few other nice minor mods like strength and magic damage reduction, but its claim to fame is the 75% fire resist. Unfortunately, this is all on a heavy shield, which will make you move significantly slower, and we just had several shields with far more utility. Generally, the only time I'll use this on solo self-found is against Diablo, since otherwise his Firestorm really hurts, but we do have other options, especially by the time you get to the 75 strength to use this. After that, we have a shield that I actually love but has sadly been almost forgotten about, and that's Wall of the Eyeless, one of the best early caster shields you could wish for, and actually not a terrible option for early zealots either thanks to the mana leech and the ability to use Holy Shield to overcome the block chance. The main advantages of this shield though are the 20% faster cast rate and the mana per kill, and a bit of the poison resist is just nice to have. I still use this on solo self-found, but it sadly, that's if I find it, but sadly and quickly gets dropped for rune words later on for various reasons, though as a light shield it can beat out a number of the more weighty options. And the last of the normal shields is the Ward, a medium shield that sadly gets ignored a bit, mainly because by the time you get this, you'll often have access to competitive rune words like Ancient's Pledge, but as a shield in and of itself, with plus strength, solid resist, and magic damage reduction, it's not a bad shield to use in a pinch, and is at least competitive with these rune words or gemmed options, that you can always get those in a light form, whereas this one will slow your roll because it's medium. Moving into the exceptionals, we have Visceratuant, a light shield with an annoying history for me, mainly because it used to be a +2 Necromancer shield that was actually halfway decent, and then it became a +1 Sorcerer shield that just feels blah in comparison. It's got okay block chance and such, but since it lacks most of the mods anyone other than a melee sorceress would want, I'll give it a skip usually these days. Though what I won't give a skip to is Moser's Blessed Circle, a rather infamous light shield among veterans. This shield comes naturally with 2 sockets, decent enough block boost, and a solid resist all modifier, making it one of the best resistance shields for non-paladins, and frankly one of my favorite general use shields in the game to tide me over until I get whatever best in slot shield I need for a given character. After that, we have Stormchaser, a medium shield that just always felt confused to me. It's basically an upgraded Stormguild though, with more lightning resist, some added cast when struck effects, more lightning damage, and some attack rating and freeze duration modifiers. It sadly just doesn't impress me much compared to other items you can find in the exceptional space, so while I do tend to keep one, I almost never use it. One shield that does get use in some odd niche builds though is Tiamat's Rebuke, a light shield that also packs a lot when struck effects, but more importantly packs resists and elemental damage. This elemental damage makes it a really solid leveling option for a number of niche builds, one of the more popular ones being things like Melee Sorceress, since she can amplify these elemental sources fairly easily. It is also a fairly nice pick for just dealing with physical immunes for other classes, since while there are better options later, this is still a fairly common unique, and it can tide you over in much the same way that people use Gimmer's Shred for. Next, we have a light shield that got nerfed out of my usual use for it, and that is Lance Guard, the Deadly Strike shield, which until 2.4 was my go-to shield for Blade Fury assassins. Though with Phoenix no longer interrupting casts, the main reason for using Lance Guard there is gone. That said, it is still an okay shield, just relatively easy to beat out by any number of other options except in very, very niche use cases, though I will use it on solo self-found melee builds if I need hit recovery and deadly strike at least. Back to another heavy shield, we have Gerke's Sanctuary, which sadly falls into a similar realm as Bverrit's Keep, in that it's definitely interesting with solid resist, replenish life, block chance, not to mention actually fairly decent amounts of damage reduction, both physical and magical, but with heavy armor penalties and a fairly high strength requirement for what it does. It's usually a shield you only use for very specific builds, unless you're doing, say, solo self-found on a tankier melee character, or you're doing say a PvP damage mitigation build very specifically. Something a bit more broadly appealing is Lidless Wall, a light caster shield that generally usurped Wall of the Eyeless simply because it packs +1 skills, faster cast rate, mana boost, and mana per kill. It's actually a fairly solid caster shield and is one of the lower strength alternatives people will use instead of Spirit, since it requires almost 1/3 the strength of the lowest strength non-paladin spirit you can make. The shield's main competitor in this strength range is Splendor, though generally speaking Lidless will beat it out for anyone except for Necromancers, since 20% magic find usually is not worth the loss of basically half your casting speed bonus, but on a Necromancer shield you can get plus skills and put that in it. The last of the exceptional shields is Radament's Sphere, a shield I really wish was better given its namesake, but the reality is it's basically the Bverrit Keep of poison, with 75% poison resist, some block, and some poison perks. It generally is just left on the ground by most players for good reason. It just lacks any really solid utility that other shields can bring you at this level, and it lives far short of its namesake. Finally, we start off in the elites with Blackoak Shield, another light shield option, but it can't usually be recommended. It's a scaling shield, with its bonuses becoming better with level, namely pump to dexterity, life, and even cold absorb, making it a fairly decent anti-cold shield or a dexterity bumper, and while it does have a few other fun mods, it just doesn't quite compete with anything else outside of very specific use cases. Next though, we have what used to be one of the most popular shields, and nowadays is still a decent shield that is used in a few builds, and that's Stormshield. This indestructible shield used to be the go-to shield because of its 35% damage reduction effect, as well as other decent mods like blocking, strength, and resist, though after some game changes that came to the game many patches ago, the damage reduction became a little superfluous, though on builds that don't quite hit the 50% damage reduction mark, it still can be a solid pick to up your durability significantly, and is still a relatively safe pick for a shield on a number of builds who just need a defensive pick-me-up on a lightweight shield. After that is Spike Thorn, which, like its smaller cousins, has damage return and even packs faster hit recovery like Lance Guard, though what sets it apart is that it packs variable percent damage reduction and comes naturally with a socket to allow you to modify it to your needs. You'll rarely see this on an actual build though, since there are better socketed shield options, but it can still be fun on weird stuff like pacifist builds, though it's not always the first pick. Now Medusa's Gaze is next in line, and is actually the most fun of the 3 heavy tower shields, with lower resist when struck, life leech, slow target, and cold resist. It is more of a gimmick shield than anything, but that lower resist proc can be used for some fun quirky builds. It will never be best in slot, or even actually that great for a lot of builds, but I do keep a couple around for more strange or even stupid build ideas. As we near the end, we have a shield that veterans respect but that most people seem to ignore, and that's Headhunter's Glory. A good shield for making some more focused builds thanks to naturally getting a variable number of sockets, though the only one that most people will bother keeping is the 3-socket version, and that is because it has advantages very much in line with Jeweler's shields, or simply put, a lot of open sockets with some good support mods. In this case, some resist, defense, and life per kill. The more popular use of this shield is to plop rainbow facets or specific jewels in it that will greatly augment a given build. Personally, I want to use the shield more often, especially since I have several of them now, but finding the jewels you need and then sparing them for this rather than other pieces of gear can be a bit more of a challenge since there are, well, far less of the things you put in this than the shield itself. The last of the unique shields is Spirit Ward, a medium shield with resist all, cold absorb, some block boosts, oh, and it casts Fade when struck. The shield is often ignored by players, 1 because it's not the usual best in slot lists, and 2 because people are usually using high-end rune words or build-specific shields by the time this comes along. That said, if you need to proc Fade, this is not the worst option. I mean, the worst option wouldn't have it, though admittedly it is significantly easier just to make a Treachery, or if you're on the rich end of things, a Last Witch will fare better, so it leaves us in a slightly awkward space. That said, if you found this or any of the other game manual videos useful, a like really helps out the channel, and of course, a special thanks to the channel members and patrons that make this possible.